Imagine picking up the iPhone, sitting in your pocket right now, and finding out that it is no longer just a smartphone. That somewhere inside its latest chip, buried beneath layers of software that most users will never see, and most tech journalists have never properly explained, Apple has quietly activated a capability so fundamentally different from anything a consumer device has ever had before that the engineers who built it refuse to use the word smartphone to describe what it has become. And the reason you have not heard about this is not because it is not real. It is because Apple did not hold a press conference. Apple did not send a press release. Apple did not put it on a billboard or announce it at a keynote with dramatic music and a countdown timer. Apple did what Apple always does when it builds something so significant that announcing it too early would hand every competitor on Earth a roadmap. They hid it. They buried it inside a software update that most people clicked through in 30 seconds without reading a single word. And what they activated inside that update is something that researchers, cryptographers, and national security experts have been waiting for and quietly dreading in equal measure for over a decade. This is not a story about a new camera feature. This is not a story about a faster processor or a thinner design. This is a story about Apple quietly turning the device in your pocket into something the technology industry does not yet have a consensus name for, and the implications of what that means for your privacy, your security, your data, and your relationship with every other device and service you use are only beginning to come into focus. To understand why what Apple just did inside the iPhone is so significant, you first need to understand the scale of what Apple actually controls and why that scale makes every quiet decision they make an earthquake felt across the entire technology industry. There are currently over 2.2 billion active Apple devices in use around the world. More than 1 billion of those are iPhones. Apple controls approximately 57% of the smartphone market in the United States, and between 25 and 30% globally, with that share growing every single quarter. The App Store processes over $1.1 trillion in transactions annually. Apple Pay handles hundreds of millions of financial transactions every single day. When Apple changes something fundamental about how the iPhone works at the hardware or operating system level, it does not just affect Apple users. It affects every bank, every payment processor, every app developer, every advertiser, every government agency, and every security researcher whose work touches the devices that over 1 billion people carry in their pockets every single day. Apple is not just a technology company. It is the operating system of modern human life for a significant portion of the global population, and what they just changed inside that operating system is not a minor update. If the idea that Apple is running a quiet technological revolution inside the device already in your pocket does not make you want to understand exactly what is happening, hit like and subscribe right now. Because what comes next explains why this is the most significant thing Apple has done since the original iPhone launch in 2007. So what exactly did Apple build, and why are researchers calling it a quantum-level capability in a consumer device? Everything comes down to a specific advancement inside Apple's latest generation silicon chip architecture and the cryptographic protocols quietly activated alongside it. Apple's chip team, widely considered the most advanced consumer silicon engineering group in the world, has been working for several years on integrating what cryptographers call post-quantum cryptographic algorithms directly into the hardware security layer of the iPhone. In simple terms, standard encryption that protects everything on your iPhone right now, your messages, your banking apps, your health data, your photos, your location history, uses mathematical problems that classical computers cannot crack in any reasonable time frame. But quantum computers, as they become more powerful, will be able to solve those mathematical problems. Apple's hardware team has built and quietly activated a new cryptographic architecture inside the latest iPhone chip that is specifically designed to remain secure even after quantum computers become powerful enough to break every current encryption standard. This is called post-quantum cryptography, and Apple has become the first company in history to deploy it at consumer scale inside a mass market device used by over 1 billion people. Read that again. Over 1 billion people are now carrying a device whose security architecture was quietly upgraded to withstand attacks from computers that do not yet exist at full scale, but are coming faster than almost anyone publicly admits. The specific implementation Apple chose reveals just how seriously the company is taking the quantum computing timeline. Apple worked with cryptographers to implement the NIST-approved post-quantum cryptographic standards that were finalized in 2024 after years of evaluation. These standards, specifically an algorithm called ML-Chem for key encapsulation and ML-DSA for digital signatures, represent the global consensus on which mathematical problems are considered safe from quantum attack. Implementing them at the hardware level inside a consumer chip, rather than simply adding them as a software layer, is a significantly more complex and secure approach. And it reveals that Apple's engineers have been planning this transition for years, long before any public announcement and long before most iPhone users had any idea quantum computing was relevant to the device in their pocket. Apple's implementation also addresses the harvest, now decrypt later threat that intelligence agencies have been warning about: the practice of foreign adversaries storing encrypted data today with the intention of decrypting it once quantum computers become powerful enough. By activating post-quantum cryptography now, Apple has retroactively protected future communications for every iPhone user against an attack strategy that may already be underway. But here is what nobody is telling the billion-plus people who own iPhones about what this change actually means for their daily lives and why it matters in ways that go far beyond abstract cryptography discussions that most people tune out within 30 seconds. Every private message you send from your iPhone, every banking transaction you authorize through Apple Pay, every health record stored in Apple Health, every location data point logged by your device, every password stored in iCloud Keychain. All of it was previously protected by encryption that a sufficiently powerful quantum computer could eventually break. And as we have already established, intelligence agencies around the world are already harvesting and storing encrypted data today in preparation for exactly that moment. What Apple quietly activated means that going forward, the data leaving your iPhone is protected by cryptographic standards, specifically engineered to remain secure in a post-quantum world. For ordinary people who have never thought about quantum computing for a single second, Apple just made a decision that protects their private communications, their financial data, and their personal information against a threat most of them have never heard of and would not fully understand, even if someone explained it to them. That is either an extraordinary act of technological stewardship, or it raises a very serious question about what else Apple is quietly deciding on behalf of a billion people without telling them. The competitive implications of Apple's move are sending shockwaves through every other major technology company and every government cybersecurity agency paying attention to this space. Google has been working on post-quantum cryptography implementation for Chrome and Android, but has not yet achieved hardware-level integration at the scale Apple just deployed. Microsoft has been pushing post-quantum standards into its enterprise security products, but consumer device deployment at iPhone scale remains ahead of where Microsoft currently stands. Samsung, which controls the majority of the Android premium market, has post-quantum research programs, but no announced consumer deployment timeline. Apple just leapfrogged every competitor in the consumer device security space simultaneously, and it did so quietly, without announcement, in a way that gives competitors no roadmap to follow, because the full technical details of Apple's implementation remain proprietary. The United States National Security Agency has publicly endorsed the transition to post-quantum cryptography as an urgent national security priority. The fact that Apple moved faster than most government agencies anticipated and deployed at a scale no government program could achieve reveals something important about where the real frontier of this technology race actually sits. It is not in government labs. It is in Cupertino, California, inside a chip that a billion people are already carrying. The bottom line is this: Apple did not just release a software update. They made a unilateral decision to upgrade the security architecture of over 1 billion consumer devices to withstand attacks from technology that does not yet exist at full commercial scale, but is coming faster than almost any public timeline acknowledges. They did it without asking permission, without making an announcement, and without explaining to the people carrying those devices what had changed or why. Whether you view that as Apple protecting its users from a threat they cannot fully understand, or as Apple making decisions about your device's fundamental architecture without your knowledge or consent, depends entirely on how much you trust the company holding the keys to the most personal device most people have ever owned. What is not debatable is this: the quantum computing threat to consumer device security is real enough that the world's most valuable technology company just spent years of engineering resources and activated a fundamental change to how over 1 billion devices handle cryptography. Apple saw something coming, and whatever they saw, they decided it was serious enough to hide the response inside a software update that most people will never read. Make sure you understand what they did and why before the next update quietly changes something else. Hit the like button and subscribe to Quantumite Pulse, because the decisions being made inside your devices without your knowledge are exactly what this channel exists to uncover.